Hi, you're here with Cody and Pete, and we're going to go over some of the sewing settings on the BERNINA 770. And this also applies to most of the BERNINAs with a color touchscreen. So let's dive right in. So to go into the sewing settings, we're going to click on the little gears. So we'll click the gears, and here we can see a number of different options. So here are our sewing machine settings for sewing. Here are settings for embroidery. These are just some personal settings. We'll jump in here real quick. So we can change the background color of our screen. We can even change the different patterns. Do something a little fun. You can even type here, and your machine will give you a little message every time you turn it on. So we can go back. Here are our bobbins, our sensors. So we can turn off and turn on our bobbin sensor as well as our top thread sensor. That's discussed in another video. Here is the noise. So every time we click on the screen, it makes a little beep. You can come here, you can change the sounds it makes. Most of them are slightly annoying in my opinion. So a simple beep or even turning the sound completely off is an option. And here are not so much settings, but just information about your machine. So I come in here, you can see what version your machine's operating on, how many stitches you have. So for instance, this machine has almost 5.3 million stitches. And I'll show you how many stitches you have accumulated since the last time you've had it maintenance. And something else that we'll talk about is the total number of cut cycles, 132. So we can go back. Go back one more screen. So let's go to the sewing settings. So we'll click here. So the few options that we have available on this screen are we can change our top thread default tension, which is something I do not recommend. In another video we showed how we turned on and turned off the tie-off function. We just did a video on the back kick or the heel kick on the foot control. We're not going to mess with the speed. What I'm looking for is this right here. This is the buttons. So this represents a hand and the buttons on the machine. So we click here. Here's how we can control what these buttons, which are physical buttons on the sewing machine, how they react when we click on them. So for instance, this button right here, which is located right here in the sewing machine, this brings the foot up and down. So let's see what we can control. So we click on it. Here, when we click that foot up and down button, what it's going to do is going to drop the foot completely, and then it'll pop it up and hover a little bit. So it allows you to reposition the fabric exactly where you need it to be. So the settings we can change is how high that foot will hover up. So you can change that height. So if you're dealing with much thicker fabric, you'll be able to increase that number greatly. Otherwise, you can just pretty much leave it at default, as you'll find out. The other one is our thread cutter. So when you hit the thread cutter button, at this current state, when I hit the thread cutter button on my machine, it's just going to cut the thread. And that's what I prefer, because I'm piecing, quilting, and I just wanted to cut the thread. But if you want, you can turn on the tie off function. So when you click the thread cutter button, it will then tie off, depending on your preferred method, either in place about 4 to 5 times or in a very short row, depending on what you have it set to. And then it will cut the thread. Personally, I like that function off, but that's just because of the type of sewing that I do. The other option is our reverse. So you have the option where it will just start sewing. So when you click the reverse button, which is the very last button. So at this point, the way it's set is it will just start sewing backwards from its current state, just like it were if it was sewing forwards. This one will actually back step. This is what I prefer. So what it'll do is it will trace my steps backwards to secure my stitching. The other option here is our pattern end button. So that can be found right here. So the pattern end button, this is really neat. So what it'll do is when you click it, the button on the machine will actually light up, and what it'll do is it will finish stitching the pattern that you're on and then stop. Currently, you can have it so it will stop, and you can have it tie off, you can have it cut your thread, or you can have it just raise the foot. I actually don't even want that on. I just like it just to stop and let me decide what I want to do, but that's just me. But you do have many different options. The other one is our needle up down. This was gone over in another video as well. So here is where we can, whenever we have the needle stop in the down position, this is how the foot will react. Is it will not hover at all, hover a little bit, or hover a lot. So it allows you to rotate and pivot your fabric. And that's pretty much it with our settings. All right, if you have any questions, leave comments below. Otherwise, happy sewing.